there was a witness.
Carter didn't tell me about the eyewitness.
Yeah, Amish kid, 8 years old.
A man of force.
I'm a police officer, ma'am. I have to talk to the boy.
A woman of faith.
You don't understand. We had nothing to do with your laws.
Yes, I do. Your son's a material witness to a homicide.
Worlds apart.
Now you have a witness.
Yeah, now I got a witness.
John, what's going on, man? What is happening?
You said we would be safe in Philadelphia.
Well, I was wrong.
You left with the Amish woman, right?
If they find me, they find the boy.
You bring this man to our house with his gun off the hand. You bring fear to this house.
Everyone has an idea about you and the Englishman.
They're looking for you.
I have done nothing against the rule of the ordinance.
Nothing? Maybe not yet.
We know where you are.
Harrison Ford and Kelly McGillis.
Hello and welcome back to Dave's Movie Diary. This is the pod where I reflect on films that I saw ages ago, for the most part. Occasionally I get really daring and watch a more recent film that I haven't seen before, and I talk about that as well. But primarily it's about rewatching films that really mean something to me, or ones that I have some sort of memory of, and then comparing my experience then to now. And sometimes I find some interesting things out about myself, or at the very least I just seem to get more out of watching the films now that I'm thinking about them and thinking about what I'm going to say on this pod. So Witness from 1985. This is one of those films that I can remember hearing about long before I actually saw it. Going back in a bit of a time capsule to the 80s here in Australia, I used to watch Peter Thompson's film reviews on Channel 9 on the Sunday program. My parents used to watch that show religiously, just as a way of keeping up to date. Of course, this is a long time before there was a thing called the internet. And at some point along the way, I used to drop in to catch Peter Thompson's film reviews. He had a really, humanistic way of talking about films. He made them sound interesting, exciting, but in a mature adult way. Hard to sort of relate everything that I think about those reviews, but they went on for a good 20, 25 years, I think. It was nearly like a staple there of my Sunday mornings for a while. In my late teens and into my 20s, I used to agree with a lot of the takes that he had once I'd seen the films. And I'm pretty sure that this is one of those films that got a really strong recommendation from him at the time. And it's one of the earliest kind of film reviews that I can recall tuning into. There was a lot of buzz around it at the time because it was Australian director Peter Weir's big Hollywood move. And he was a really distinctive Australian director with films like The Cars That Ate Paris, Picnic at Hanging Rock, really atmospheric film, that one. Gallipoli's a lot more well-known, of course, with a young Mel Gibson in it, and The Year of Living Dangerously, of course, as well, set in Cambodia, with Mel again. So he was really a director that we took to heart here in Australia. And when he went to Hollywood in 85, straight into a film with Harrison Ford, possibly the biggest film star in the world at that time, coming off Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Blade Runner. That was a big deal for us here in the land of Oz. I can actually remember my parents going to see this in the cinema, probably based partly on Peter Weir's review, but also back then there just wasn't that much else to do. And going to the cinema was a thing. And it was, this is back when movies used to be part of the culture. I caught it later on TV, probably later 80s. It would have got to TV reasonably quickly, I think, with Peter Weir's connection to the film. And looking back, I can remember thinking, geez, it's weird seeing one of my heroes, and Harrison Ford was definitely one of those, due to Han Solo primarily, and Indiana Jones to a far lesser extent. But I remember thinking this is weird seeing Han Solo in a contemporary sort of drama, not a futuristic space opera trilogy of movies, or as a matinee idol sort of Indiana Jones character. I don't think I'd seen Blade Runner at that point, so I had no other film relationship with Harrison Ford except as these larger than life wisecracking characters. And then in this, he's a modern day cop behaving as a normal person. That was jarring. So that was my main recollection of the film, I think, from the first watch way back when, late 80s, when I was 16, 17 probably. I do recall liking the film from the get-go for lots of reasons, and I've revisited it quite regularly. Not for a while now, though, probably, 10 years or more. It's a film I've watched a lot with my folks because there is that nostalgia element that they saw it and we all enjoyed the film multiple times together. There's some great scenes in it. Lots of things really work well in this film. So I've had a long, really enjoyable history with this one. Probably seen it around 10 or 11 times. What happens in the film? The story basically is that a young Amish boy, Samuel, and his mother Rachel travel into Philadelphia. A quick word on the Amish. The Amish are a Christian bunch of people, primarily living in Pennsylvania, in northeastern United States. They have strong ideas about the role or the lack of technology in their society. They're very God-fearing people. They like to live in traditional ways. They like to rely on doing things by hand, and their water comes to them using traditional well systems, and they don't believe in doing things for show or for vanity. So they also speak seemingly a Pennsylvania version of Dutch, I think it is. So there's a strong sort of Dutch Germanic look and feel to everything. But yeah, they live in a rural society, living off the land, living a simple, God-fearing life and keeping to themselves and not really interacting with Western society. This is a key element of this film. So anyway, that's the background. So yeah, once again, there's a young Amish boy, Samuel. He seems like he's, 7 or 8 maybe, and his mother, Rachel. They have to go into Philadelphia. While they're there, Samuel witnesses a murder in a train station bathroom. The murderer is Danny Glover, interestingly, of Lethal Weapon fame. It seems to be some sort of a payback for a drug deal or something. We're not quite clear. There is an element of undercover work, maybe, by the murdered man. But anyway, the young boy witnesses the murder. It gets reported to the police. The police show up, and the police investigation is led by a character called John Book. This is Harrison Ford's character. Book quickly realizes something isn't right, that this isn't just a simple case. And he realizes that Samuel is key because he has witnessed the murder. We quickly realize that there's a lot of corruption involved here, that the murderer is likely another police officer. So the boy becomes a target, and Book decides to look after the boy, so he becomes a target himself. There's a shootout with Danny Glover trying to kill Book. He has to go into hiding. Where does he hide? Well, he hides out inside the Amish community, which is Samuel and Rachel's community, recovering from his wounds, nearly dying, and then pretends to be one of them while he recuperates and decides on his next move. And as part of that, he has to adapt to their way of life. There's no modernity there. There's no phones, for example. He has to go into the nearest town to call his partner, who's also now has his life in jeopardy. There's obviously no TVs. There's no technology to speak of. everything is very simplistic and peaceful and loving. They all look after each other. It's just a totally different life to his. He doesn't seem to have a family of his own, apart from a sister who initially puts up Samuel and Rachel for a night before they all flee back into the Amish world. While he's there, of course, John Book is forming an emotional connection with Rachel. It's not something he's seeking, but it just seems to happen organically. And all the while, the corrupt police are still trying to track him down. They need to get rid of him and probably the boy as well. And everything builds towards a confrontation right at the back end of the film. I mentioned at the outset that this one was directed by Peter Weir. His relationship to the film and to me, and why I've got such fond memories, is key. The Australian element, of course. This is back in the 80s when the cultural cringe was still a thing in Australia. It's not so much now, thank God. But it was when we felt like we really had to celebrate to the hilt any Australian who seemed to make any impact overseas. It was like this big deal. And often our films and our culture that we showed to the international world back then was very small, and it seemed like we made it that way. We didn't want to show ourselves. That's the Australian way. You sort of just go about your business quietly. You don't make a big deal of it. We have the tall poppy syndrome here, of course, where we love people when they become successful, but we quickly want to bring them back down to size, cut them down to size. So, anyway, I'm sort of getting off the track here, but when one of our own really made it big back then, we really thought it was unbelievable. And Peter Weir, graduating from those iconic Australian movies that he made, like I mentioned before, particularly Picnic at Hanging Rock and Gallipoli, they're so Australian. They're set in Australia. They're about very Australian themes. Gallipoli, of course, 1915 in Turkey. The famous charge against the Germans that was a tragic loss of life that we celebrate every year on Anzac Day here, and we I guess we're thankful to the men and women that have lost their lives in combat. Picnic at Hanging Rock, very atmospheric, set in 1900 in rural Victoria. Again, very Australian. The Year of Living Dangerously, an Australian journalist caught up in Pol Pot's Cambodia. All about observation, cultural tension, people slightly out of place. And Witness is exactly that again, just set in America instead of Australia. But it's just a well put together film. Peter Weir has amazing control of everything. Nothing is over the top, but there is enough artistry there to make it an enjoyable experience, not just a straight ahead story. So there's no fat in the movie at all. Every scene matters. I'm always a fan of that. Now look, Harrison Ford, fascinating in this. As I said before, I had no other experience of him apart from being a heroic character, a wisecracking, charismatic guy, laid back, or cynical, or never getting too excited. Here, he's just a guy. He's a tired, slightly broken cop who is very black and white, very attuned to what justice should be. And what's really interesting to me in this one is how physical Harrison Ford's performance is. Once he gets into the Amish community, he literally changes how he moves. His hands are in his pockets. He's walking with his head down a lot, really trying not to be noticed. But I feel like the Amish sense of being humble gets to him, and he kind of becomes one of them for a while, in a way. Not totally, but in some ways. And it's really powerful when I thought about what he normally represents. Some other really humanist things that he does. crouching down to talk to Samuel right from the get-go. And my own thoughts are that when adults do that, that's a really knowing look at their character. They're taking the height differential out of the picture. Kids can relate to them much more openly and without a hierarchy involved. The dance scene with Rachel in this, where they're working on the car that they've escaped in the barn. She's holding the light while he's trying to fix it. The radio snaps on. It's a song that he loves. They have this dance. They're not doing anything wrong, but in her society, in the Amish society, they definitely are. But she loses herself, and they dance, and they're smiling at each other. They nearly have a moment. John Book, Harrison Ford's character, nearly comes towards Rachel and kisses her. You can watch him stopping himself and then distracting them both by starting the dance again. A lot of restraint in this film, a lot of suppressed emotion, and that's what makes it so good. You can feel this sexual tension between them. It gets out of control to the point where she's happy to let him see her naked body, and again he doesn't take it any further. He realizes it'd be the wrong move for both of them. Pretty hard to do, because we're talking about Kelly McGillis here in 1985. That would take a lot of restraint. The Amish world is really the surprise of this film for me, and it has been. That's why the film's so enduring. The clash of cultures, and I got that right from my first watch back in the late 80s. I'd never seen or heard of a community like this. It doesn't feel exotic or sensationalized the way Peter Weir handles it. It just feels grounded and lived in. And what's interesting is how quickly I could understand John Book in that environment, and how ego quickly goes out of it. He puts the gun aside. You know, I can see why Book is drawn to this place and this culture, the Amish culture and community. I think its community is a big part of it. Even though we know he doesn't belong here, he's very happy to inhabit and learn their ways. There's no violence. There's no noise. These people are just living, but living very peacefully and harmoniously. Supporting cast in this one is outstanding. Lucas Haas as Samuel. It's one of the great child performances. Nothing's forced. The way he looks at the camera with those big eyes. A lot of naivety and sensitivity, and what a find he was. He went on to have a really good career, but a character actor, understated kind of career. In comparison to Haley Joel Osment, I guess, who came out of the box so strong in Sixth Sense and AI, and then sort of largely disappeared. Macaulay Culkin, who was just as big as Michael Jackson there for a year or two, and then had some problems, I think, adjusting to that. There's child actors. It's usually a troubled journey. Lucas Haas, without knowing too much about him, didn't seem to have that, and he just morphed into a really competent actor. He shows up in many films. He was in Inception briefly as well, or he had a supporting role in that. It's rare, isn't it, that someone who has a breakout child performance like this then goes on to have a breakout adult, larger-than-life career. Leo being the exception, but Leo is he's different. Kelly McGillis as Rachel, wow. She's not just a love interest here. She's really the emotional center of the film. I'd forgotten how incredibly striking she is. She has got these amazing eyes that just are large and luminescent and taking in everything and reflecting her intelligence. And her face is a modern Venus. It is exceptional. I think our culture tends to remember her just as the window dressing in Top Gun with Cruise, but she's exceptional in this film. Exceptional 3 years later in The Accused, a film that seems to have been cancelled. haven't seen that around anywhere for years. With Jodie Foster, and people remember that film for Jodie Foster's performance, rightly so. But Kelly McGillis was just as awesome in a different kind of way. I think she sort of faded away from films, probably because that's what she wanted. She never seemed to be enjoying the spotlight, and I know she had some troubled early times in Hollywood. That's been well documented. But anyway, just out of this world in this film. I can see why there's 4 or 5 guys breaking their necks to try and get her attention in certain parts of this film. Other interesting performances, Danny Glover. Most people know him from Lethal Weapon as the kindly older guy in that. He was actually a lot younger than you think, but that's the way they all were back in the day. They all seem to be much older. But here he's playing something far more grounded and threatening, and he's really good as the corrupt, murderous cop. He really has a presence. It's intriguing to me now why he didn't do more of these roles, because he's got a certain physicality and a look that really works for a bad guy. Alexander Godunov plays the Amish suitor, also vying for Rachel's attentions quite blatantly, actually. And straight away, he sees Harrison Ford's character as a rival, even before Harrison Ford sees himself as being interested, I think. He brings a lot of great energy to this role. He looked familiar. Of course he does. He's one of the guys in Die Hard. And tragically passed away quite young in the mid-90s. That's why I haven't seen him since. He's excellent in this film. Joseph Sommer plays the corrupt police chief. He's got one of the most interesting roles for me, because he's not a moustache-twirling villain. He's not an out-and-out bad guy. He's just a man who found the easy way to get ahead without probably thinking too much about what he was doing in selling precursors for drugs. That's what this movie's about. These corrupt cops steal a large element of a large supply of precursors, and Danny Glover murders another cop to keep it quiet. The boy sees it, yada, 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 that's the premise of the film. And you see the way Joseph Sommers plays this is an everyman. He's got his normal home with his wife. They're having a barbecue there when John Book's calling him and saying, "I'm going to come after you." It's this contrast that makes him unsettling, because I always say this: if someone like this could be tempted, a seemingly normal family man, then any of us could be tempted if we're put in the right or wrong situation. And I love near the end where he could have tried to shoot his way out of it, and he looks and he realizes, what have I been doing? And Joseph Sommer really portrays that realization quite well. Look fast for a young Viggo Mortensen in the barn building scene. He has some great little flashes there. Early look at a legend actor. One of the things I always liked about this film, and on the rewatch confirmed it for me, is that there's some great scenes here. The train station murder opening is really gripping and suspense filled. You're just waiting for the boy to be caught, and the way that they do the scene is brilliant. Down to the way that the doors in the stalls automatically swing back. That's what saves the boy's life. Otherwise, he would have been discovered. I've already talked about the dance scene after they're repairing the car. All about restraint, not romance. The barn raising sequence is legendary, and it is so heartwarming. It's just a simple thing about these Amish people all banding together to bring up this barn in one day. They're all crawling over this structure like worker bees or ants or something, all in unison. And John Book becomes part of their community. And it's interesting. John Book the character has carpentry as part of his history, as of course Harrison Ford does. Nice little film within a film, life imitating art, art imitating life. And that sequence is filmed so well because Book's proficiency with the hammer and nails gets the knowing looks from the other Amish men. And from that moment on, he's one of them. He's accepted, and they come to his defense later. I love the way that he learns Amish life in all these awkward encounters. They're all laughing at him. They're making light of his unfamiliarity with their life, with their clothes. A real fish out of water story. It's always something worth watching, isn't it? Someone out of their comfort zone, and John Book is definitely that in this film. But he does it in a winning Harrison Ford way that's very endearing. I do love the confrontation in the town towards the end of the film. Part of the Amish creed is never to respond to violence. They're very anti-violence, anti-guns. They're used to being ostracized by the locals. There's some rednecks there. They stop the procession. The Amish use horse and buggies, of course, and they often hold up the traffic. And the locals sometimes get a bit snarky about that. On this day, they choose to confront the Amish. An unlikely weapon, an ice cream cone, is used to dab ice cream on the character there. What's his name again? The actor Alexander Godunov's character gets ice cream smeared on his face, and John Book, he's just had enough. He gets out, strolls up to them. These rednecks are expecting the usual no confrontation. John Book definitely gives them some confrontation, and I love seeing Harrison Ford lose his cool. He's always great when he gets angry. He ramps it up a few times in The Fugitive, of course. I didn't murder my wife at the start when he's accused of her murder. It's a great scene here. He gets that real set look on his face. He's always about injustice, isn't he, Harrison Ford, in his best roles, and this is one of them. Of course, the confrontation costs him dearly because that draws the heat. That's where Danny Glover and the other cops know where to come now. The other things I liked about this film too is just the way Samuel, the Lucas Haas character, just observes everything silently through those massive brown eyes of his, just like a child does, just innocently, and he really learns a lot about life in this film. I've been asking this question a lot now. Is it a date film? Is it a hangover film? Which one is it? I do think it's a date film. Definitely, there's lots of emotional moments here that would get pulses racing, and some of the chemistry between McGillis and Ford would hopefully translate to yourself and your date. There's lots of things to reminisce and talk about afterwards about this story and how uplifting it is. It's definitely a date film. It's not a typical romance film at all, but it's, there's some sparks flying there that could catch fire for you. Hangover film? I think so. I think it works on that dynamic as well. It doesn't tax you much intellectually. I don't think it's really very philosophical, apart from comparing modern culture with a far simpler way of living and romance and things like that. It's easy to drift in and out of, probably, if you're not on your feeling the best. It's very comforting, nostalgic, of course. It's an old film now. It's 40 years old. It's got Harrison Ford in it. You can just gaze there and look at Kelly McGillis. I could easily pass a couple of hours doing that. And it resolves in a really satisfying way. So I do think it works as both a date film and a hangover film. Great film all up. The rewatch was fantastic. Again, never disappoints me, this film. It hasn't aged because it is set in such a set time and place that doesn't try and keep up with fads or trends. It's never going to age. It's only aging probably in the parts that are outside the Amish community, sorry. And what, 85% of the film is in the Amish community. So it's always going to be a timeless film. So look, it's a really controlled direction by Peter Weir. Nothing's wasted and overdone. It hits a lot of elements as a thriller, a romance, cultural clash film all at once, but it never loses its balance. Never gets too far away from the story, which is John Book, fish out of water, recovering from nearly losing his life. Kelly McGillis nurses him back to it. Their romance is sputtering along, and all the while, the corrupt cops and the modern world, are closing in. Very compelling. I also want to make the point, I think it's one of those Harrison Ford performances in films that people don't talk about enough when they talk about his career. I feel it's the lost film of his. There's probably a few more around this period. Mosquito Coast the following year is vastly underrated and forgotten. Frantic in '88, the Polanski film he did as well, largely ignored. It's like people have this blind spot from '84 with Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, all the way through until the next indie movie in '89 with Sean Connery and River Phoenix. It's like all these films in between got forgotten about, except perhaps his supporting role in Working Girl. But there's three other, at least, great performances there that I've just mentioned that should get more airplay. Of course, after Indiana Jones and the Lost Crusade, he comes back with Presumed Innocent, just a banger of a film. Love that movie, love everything about it. And then he probably had one more big film left in him, which was The Fugitive, and since then it's been lean pickings really for Harrison Ford. But yeah, this film isn't iconic in the same way, obviously, as Han Solo or Indiana Jones films are. But it might actually be one of, if not his most human performance, and it's great seeing him in this film as always. So check it out if you can. I had an old copy of it, so that always comes in handy. I haven't seen it around for a while. Maybe you can find it on YouTube, but you'd probably have to pay for it. So yeah, track it down if you haven't seen it, and if you have, why not do the rewatch? I'm a big fan of the rewatch, as you can tell. All right, thanks for listening as always. See you next time.